So, hello everyone. Today we are going to study Unit 10, that is Ecology, and this unit consists of three chapters. Chapter 11 deals with organism and population, Chapter 12, Ecosystem, Chapter 13 deals with biodiversity and conservation. So, in this video, we are going to study organism and population, that is Chapter 11. So let us start. Diversity is not only a characteristic of living organism but also content in biology textbook. Biology is presented either as botany, zoology, and microbiology, or as classical and modern. The latter is euphemism for molecular aspects of biology. Luckily, we have many threads which weave the different areas of biological information into a unifying principle. Ecology is one such thread which gives us a holistic perspective to biology. The essence of biological understanding is to know how organisms, while remaining an individual, interact with other organisms and physical habitat as a group and hence behave like organized wholes. It means population, community, population, community, ecosystem, or even as the whole biosphere. Ecology explains to us all this. A particular aspect of this is the study of anthropogenic environmental degradation and the socio-political issues it has raised. This unit describes as well as takes a critical view of the above aspects. Ramdeo Misra is revered as the father of ecology in India. Born on 26 August 1908, Ramdeo Misra obtained PhD in ecology under Professor W.H. Pearsall, FRS, from Leeds University in UK. He established teaching and research in ecology at the Department of Botany of the Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. His research laid the foundation of understanding of tropical communities and their succession, environmental responses of plant populations, and productivity, and nutrient cycling in tropical forest and grassland ecosystem. Misra formulated the first postgraduate course in ecology in India. Over 50 scholars obtained PhD degree under his supervision and moved on to other universities and research institutes to initiate ecology teaching and research across the country. He was honored with the fellowship of Indian National Science Academy and World Academy of Arts and Science and the prestigious Sanjay Gandhi Award in Environment and Ecology. Due to his efforts, the government of India established the National Committee for Environmental Planning and Coordination, which in later years paved the way for the establishment of Ministry of Environment and Forest. Organism and Population, that is chapter 11. Our living world is fascinatingly diverse and amazingly complex. We can try to understand its complexity by investigating processes at various levels of biological organization, macromolecules, cell, tissues, organs, individual organism, population, communities, ecosystem, and biomes. At any level of biological organization, we can ask two types of question. For example, when we hear the bulbul singing early morning in the garden, we may ask, how does the bird sing? Or why does the bird sing? The how type questions seek the mechanism behind the process, while the why type questions seek the significance of the process. For the first question in our example, the answer might be in terms of operation of the voice box and the vibrating bone in the bird. Whereas for the second question, answer may lie in the bird's need to communicate with its mate during breeding season. When you observe nature around you with a scientific frame of mind, you will certainly come up with many interesting questions of both types. Why are why are night blooming flowers generally white? How does the bee know how which flower has nectar? Why does cactus have so many thorns? How does a chick spears recognize her own mother, and so on? You have already learnt in previous classes that ecology is a subject which studies the interaction among organism and between the organism and its physical environment. Ecology is basically concerned with four levels of biological organization: organism, population, communities, and biomes. In this chapter, we explore ecology at population levels. Population. Population attributes. In nature, We rarely find isolated single individuals of any species. Majority of them live in groups in a well-defined geographical area, share or compete for similar resources, potentially interbreed, and thus constitute a population. Although the term interbreeding implies sexual reproduction, a group of individuals resulting from even asexual reproduction is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological studies. Cormona, uh, all the cormorants in a wetland, rats in an abandoned dwelling, teak wood trees in a forest, rag bacteria in a culture plate, and lotus plant in a pond are some examples of population. In earlier chapter, you have learned that although an individual organism is one that has up to cope with a change environment, it is at the population level that natural selection operates to evolve the desired traits. Population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. A population has certain attributes whereas an individual organism does not. An individual may have birth and deaths, but a population has birth rates and death rates. In a population, these rates refer to a per capita birth and deaths. The rates hence expressed are change in number increase or decrease with respect to member of the population. Here as an example, if in a pond there were 20 lotus plant last year and through production 8 new plant are added, taking the current population to 28. We calculate the birth rate as 0.4 offspring per lotus per year. If four individuals are in a laboratory population of 40 fruit flies died during a specified time interval, say a week, the death rate in a population during that period is 0.1 individual per fruit fly per week. Another attribute characteristic of a population is sex ratio. An individual is either a male or female, but a population has a sex ratio. For example, 60% of the population are females and 40% are males. A population at any given time is composed of individuals of different ages. If the age distribution percent individuals of a given age or age group is plotted for the population, the resulting structure is called an age pyramid. For human population, the age pyramid generally show age distribution of males and females in a diagram. The shape of the pyramid reflects the growth status of the population, whether it is growing, stable, or declining. It is a diagram representing of representing age pyramids for human population. If pre-reproductive period, if reproductive period is declining, from pre-reproductive period, it means it's expanding. If it's shown in the diagram, it's stable, and if it's uneven, it's declining, like shown in this figure. The size of the population tells us a lot about its status in the habitat. Whatever ecological processes we wish to investigate in a population, be it the outcome of competition with another species, the impact of a predator, or the effect of a pesticide application, we always evaluate them in terms of any change in the population size. In the size in nature could be as low as smaller than 10 Siberian cranes and Bharatpur wetlands in any year, or go into millions. Chlamydomonas in a pond. Population size, technically called population density, designated as n, need not necessarily be measured in numbers only, although total number is generally the most appropriate measure of population density. It is in some cases either meaningless or difficult to determine. In an area, if there are 200 carrot grass, Parthenium hysterophorus plants, but only a single huge banyan tree with a large canopy, stating that the population density of the banyan is low relative to that of carrot grass amounts to underestimating the enormous role of the banyan in that community. In such cases, the percent cover or biomass is a more meaningful measure of the population size. Total number is again not an easily adoptable measure if the population is huge and counting is impossible or very time consuming. If you have a dense laboratory culture of a bacteria in a petri dish, What is the best measure to report its density? Sometimes, for certain ecological investigation, there is no need to know the absolute population densities. Relative densities serve the purpose equally well. For instance, the number of fish caught per trap is good enough measure of its total population density in the lake. We are mostly obliged to estimate population sizes indirectly without actually counting them or seeing them. The tiger census in our national parks and tiger reserves is often based on pug marks and fecal pellets. Population growth. The size of a population for any species is not a static parameter. It keeps changing with time depending on various factors including food availability, predation, pressure, and adverse weather. In fact, it is these changes in population density that give us some idea of what is happening to the population, whether it is flourishing or declining. Whatever might be the ultimate reason, the density of a population in a given habitat during a given period fluctuate due to changes in four basic processes that are given as natality, mortality, immigration, and immigration. Two of which, natality and immigration, contribute to an increased population density, and two, mortality and immigration, to a decrease in population. Let's study all fours. Natality. Natality refers to the number of birds during a given period in the population that are added to the initial density. And as we have read that two of which, natality and immigration contribute to an increase in population. Mortality is the number of deaths in a population during a given period. Immigration, it's the number of individuals of the same species that have come into the habitat from elsewhere during the time period under consideration. Immigration or immigration is the number of individual of the population who left the habitat and gone elsewhere during the time period under consideration. So here is a diagram. Its population density, that is denoted by N, immigration, that is denoted by E, natality, that is denoted by B, and immigration, that is denoted by I, and mortality, that is denoted by D. Here all signs are given. Let's study them in detail. Natality plus population density. Here plus minus signs are given, and let's study in this para. It is given here about the figure. So if n is the population density at time t, then its density at time t plus 1 is, this is n population density plus b plus 1 natality minus d mortality plus e immigration, not immigration. Immigration, the sign is I. You can see from the above equation 11.2 that the population density will increase if the number of birth plus the number of immigrant is more than the number of deaths plus the number of immigrants under normal condition. Birth and deaths are the most important factor influencing population density. The two factors assuming importance only under special condition. For instance, if a new habitat is just being colonized, immigration may contribute more significantly to population growth than birth rates. Growth models. Does the growth of a population with time show any specific and predictable pattern? We have been concerned about unbridled human population growth and problems created by it in our country. And it is therefore natural for us to be curious if different animal populations in nature behave the same way or show some restraints on growth. Perhaps we can learn a lesson or two from nature or how to control population growth. Exponential growth. Resource, food and space availability is obviously essential for the unimpeded growth of a population. Ideally, when resources in the habitat are limited, each species has the ability to realize fully its innate potential to grow in number. As Darwin observed while developing his theory of natural selection, then the population grows in an exponential or geometric fashion. If in a population of size and the birth rate, not total number but per capita birth, are represented as B and death rate again per capita death rate as D, then the increase or decrease in N during a unit time period T, dn by dt will be dn by dt equal b minus t into n. Let b minus d equal r, then dn by dt equal rn. The r in this equation is called intrinsic rate of natural increase and is a very important parameter chosen for assessing impacts of antibiotic or abiotic factor in population growth. To give you some idea about the magnitude of R values for the Norway rat, the R is 0.015 and for the floor beetle it is 0.12. In 1981, the R value for human population in India was 0.025. 0205. Find out what the current R value is. For calculating it, you need to know the birth rates and death rates. The above equation describes the exponential or geometric growth pattern of a population and results in J-shaped curve with when we plot N's relation to time. If you are familiar with basic calculus, you can derive the integral form of the exponential growth equation as nt equal no n0 ert, where nt is population density after time t and 0 population density at time 0. R intrinsic rate of natural increase is the base of natural logarithms, that is this number. Any species growing exponentially under unlimited resource condition can reach enormous population densities in a short time. Darwin showed how even a slow growing animal like elephant could reach enormous number in the absence of checks. The following is an anecdote popularly narrated to demonstrate dramatically how fast a huge population could build up when growing exponentially. The king and the minister sat for a chess game. Here is a story. The king and the minister sat for a chess game. The king, confident of winning the game, was ready to accept any bet proposed by the minister. The minister humbly said that if he won, he wanted only some wheat grains, the quantity of which is to be calculated by placing the chessboard one grain in square one, when then two in square two, then four in square three, and 8 in square 4, and so on, doubling each time the previous quantity of wheat on the next square until all the 64 square were filled. The king accepted a seemingly silly bet and started the game, but unluckily for him, the minister won. King felt that fulfilling the minister bet was so easy. He started with a single grain on the first square and proceeded to fill the other squares following minister's suggested procedure, but the time he covered half the chessboard. The king realized to his dismay that all the wheat produced in his entire kingdom pooled together would still be inadequate to cover all 64 squares. Now think of a teeny paramecium fighting with just one individual, and through binary fission, doubling in number every day, and imagine what a mind-boggling population size it would be reached in 64 days, provided food and space remain unlimited. Logistic growth. No population of any species in nature has at its disposal unlimited resources to permit exponential growth. This leads to competition between individuals for limited resources. Eventually, the fittest individual will survive and reproduce. The governments of many countries have also realized this fact and introduced various restraints with a view to limit human population growth. In nature, a given habitat has enough resources to support a maximum possible number beyond which no further growth is possible. Let us recall this limit as nature's carrying capacity for that species in that habitat. A population growing in a habitat with limited resources so initially a lag phase, followed by phases of acceleration and deceleration, and finally an asymptote. When the population density reaches a carrying capacity, a plot of n in relation to time t results in a sigmoid curve. This type of population growth is called Verhult-Peer logistic growth and is described by the following equation: dn plus upon dt equal rn, bracket k minus n upon k, bracket close. When n equal population density at time t, r interesting rate of natural increase, k carrying capacity. Since resources for growth of for most animal population are finite and become limiting sooner or later, the logistic growth model is considered as more realistic one. Gathered from government census data, the population figures for India for the last 100 year, plot them and check which growth pattern is evident. Life history variation. Population evolved to maximize their reproductive fitness, also called Darwinian fitness, in the habitat in which they live. Under a particular set of selection pressures, organisms evolved toward the most efficient reproductive strategy. Some organisms breed only once in their lifetime. Pacific salmon face bamboo, while others breed many times during their lifetime. Most bird and mammals, some reproduce a large number of small-sized offspring, oyster, pelagic fishes, while others produce small number of large-sized offspring, bird, mammal. So, which is desirable for maximizing fitness? Ecologists suggest that life history traits of organisms have evolved in relation to the constraints imposed by the abiotic and biotic component of the habitat in which they live. Evolution of life history traits in different species is currently an important area of research being conducted by ecologists. Population interaction. Can you think of any natural habitat on Earth that is inhabited just by a single species? There is no such habitat, and such a situation is even inconceivable. For any species, the minimum requirement is one more species on which it can feed. Even a plant species which makes its own food cannot survive alone. It needs soil microbe to break down the organic matter in soil and return the organic nutrient for absorption. And then, how will the plant manage pollination without an animal agent? It is obvious that in nature, animal, plant, and microbe do not and cannot live in isolation but to interact in various ways to form a biological community. Even in animal communities, many interactive linkages exist, although all may not be readily apparent. Interspecific interaction arise from the interaction of population of two different species. They could be beneficial, detrimental, or neutral, neither harm or nor benefit to one of the species or both, assigning to a plus sign for beneficial interaction, minus sign for detrimental, and a zero for neutral interaction. Let us look at all the possible outcomes for interspecific interaction. Species A plus, species B plus, and name of interaction mutualism. Species A minus species B minus competition. This means that both the species are not harmful but both are beneficial to each other. In this, both are harmful to each other. In this, species A is beneficial, but species B is harmful. Species A is beneficial and species B harmful in the both cases, but differs in microorganism and macroorganism. Species A is beneficial, but species B is neutral. In this, species A is harmful, but species B is neutral. Their names of interaction are given: predation, parasitism, commensalism, amensalism. These are the name of interaction and the total interactions. Both the special benefit in mutualism and both lose in competition in their interaction with each other. In both parasitism and predation, only one species benefits, parasite and predator respectively, and the interaction is detrimental to the other species, host and prey respectively. The interaction where one species benefited and the other is neither benefited nor harmed is called commensalism. In amensalism, on the other hand, one species is harmed, whereas the other is unaffected. Predation, parasitism, commensalism share a common characteristic. The interacting species live closely together. Predation. What would happen to all the energy fixed by autotrophic organism if the community has no animal to eat the plants? You can think of predation as nature's way of transferring to high trophic levels the energy fixed by plants. When we think of predator and prey, most probably It is the tiger and the deer that readily come out to our mind. But a sparrow eating any seed is no less a predator, although animals eating plant are characterized separately as herbivorous, not predators. They are in a broad ecological context, not very different from predators. Besides acting as conduits for energy transfer across tropic levels, predators play other important roles. They keep prey population under control, but for predators, prey species could achieve very high population densities and cause ecosystem instability. When certain exotic species are introduced into a geographical area, they become invasive and start spreading fast because the invaded land does not have its natural predators. The prickly pear cactus introduced into Australia in the early 1920 caused havoc by spreading rapidly into millions of hectares of Rangeland. Finally, the invasive cactus was brought under control only after the cactus feeding predator, a moth, from its natural habitat was introduced into the country. Biological control method adopted in agriculture, pest control are based on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. Predators also help in maintaining species diversity in a community by reducing the intensity of competition among competing prey species. In the rocky interradial communities of American Pacific coast, the starfish species Castor is an important predator. In a field experiment, when all the starfish were removed from an enclosed interradial area, more than 10 species of invertebrate became extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. If a predator is too efficient and over exploits its prey, then the prey might become extinct, and following it, the predator will also become extinct for lack of food. This is the reason why predators in nature are prudent. Prey species have evolved various defenses to lessen the impact of predation. Some species of insects and frogs are cryptically colored, camouflage, to avoid being detected easily by the predator. Some are poisonous and therefore avoided by the predator. A monarch butterfly is highly distasteful to its predator because of special chemical present in its body. Interestingly, the butterfly acquires this chemical during its caterpillar stage by feeding on a poisonous weed. For plant herbivores are the predators. Nearly 25% of all insects are known to be phytophagous, feeding on plant sap and other part of plant. The problem is particularly severe for plant because unlike animals, they cannot run away from their predator. Plant therefore have evolved an astonishing variety of morphological and chemical defenses against herbivores. Thorns, acacia, cactus are the most common morphological means of defense. Many plants produce and store chemicals that make the herbivores sick when they are eaten, inhibit feeding or digestion, disrupt its reproduction, or even kill it. You must have seen the weed calotropis growing in abandoned fields. A plant produces highly poisonous cardiac glycosides, and that is why you never see any cattle or goats browsing on this plant. The wide variety of chemical substances that we extract from plants on a commercial scale, nicotine, caffeine, quinine, strychnine, opium, etc., are produced by them actually as defense against grazer and browser competition. When Darwin spoke of the struggle for existence and survival of fittest in nature, he was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. It is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resource that are limiting, but this is not entirely true. Firstly, totally unrelated species could also compete for the same resource. For instance, in some shallow South American lakes, visiting flamingos and residents fishes compete for their common food, the zooplankton in the lake. Secondly, resources need not to be limiting for competition to occur. In interference competition, the feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, even if resources, food, and space are abundant. Therefore, competition is best defined as the process in which the fitness of one species, measured in terms of its R, the interesting rate of increase, is significantly lower in the presence of another species. It is relatively easy to demonstrate in laboratory experiments. As Gauss and other experimental ecologists did, when resources are limited and the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species, but evidence for such competitive exclusion occurring in nature is not always conclusive. Strong and persuasive circumstantial evidence does exist. However, in some cases, the Abingdon tortoise in Galapagos Island became extinct within a decade after goats were introduced on the island, apparently due to the greater browsing efficiency of the goats. And another evidence for the occurrence of competition in nature comes from what is called competitive release, a species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of presence of a competitively superior species found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing species is experimentally removed. Cornell's elegant field experiment showed that on the rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and comparatively superior barnacle balanus dominates the intertidal area and exclude the smaller barnacle Chathamellus from the zone. In general, herbivorous and plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivores. Gauss's competitive exclusion principle states that two closely related species competing for the same resource cannot coexist indefinitely, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated and eventually. This may be true if the resources are limited, but not otherwise. More recent studies do not support such a gross generalization about competition, while they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition in nature. They point out that species facing competition might evolve mechanism that promote existence rather than inclusion. One such mechanism is resource partition. If two species compete for the same resource, they could avoid competition by choosing, for instance, different types of for feeding or different foraging patterns. Mac Arthur showed that five closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Parasitism. Considering that the parasitic mode of life ensures free logging and meals, it is not surprising that parasitism has evolved in so many taxonomic groups from plants to higher vertebrates. Many parasites have evolved to host specific. They can parasitize only a single species of host in such a way that both host and the parasite tend to co-evolve. That is, if the host evolves a special mechanism for rejecting or resisting the parasite has to evolve mechanism to counteract them and neutralize them in order to be successful with the same host species. In accordance with their lifestyle, parasites evolved special adaptations such as the loss of unnecessary sense organs, presence of adhesive organ or suckers to cling onto the host, loss of digestive system, and high reproductive capacity. The life cycle of parasites are often complex, involving one or two intermediate host or vector to facilitate parasitization of its primary host. The human liver fluke, a trematode parasite depend on two intermediate hosts, a snail and a fish, to complete its life cycle. The malarial parasite needs a vector mosquito is spread to the other host. Majority of the parasitic parasites harm the host. They may reduce the survival, growth, and reproduction of the host and reduce its population density. They might render the host more vulnerable to predation by making it physically weak. Do you believe that an ideal parasite should be able to thrive within the host without harming it? Then why didn't natural selection led to the evolution of such totally harmless parasites? Parasites that feed on the external surface of the host organism are called ectoparasites. The most familiar example of this group are the lice on humans and ticks on dogs. Many marine fishes are infested with the ectoparasitic copepods. Cuscuta, a parasitic plant that is commonly found growing on hedge plants has lost its chlorophyll and leaves in the course of evolution. It derives its nutrition from the host plant, which it parasites. The female mosquito is not considered a parasite, although it needs our blood for reproduction. Can you explain why? In contrast, endoparasites are those that live inside the host body at different like liver, kidney, lungs, red blood cell, etc. The life cycle of endoparasite are more complex because of their extreme specialization. Their morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified while emphasizing their reproductive potential. Parasitism in birds is a fascinating example of parasitism in which the parasitic bird lays egg in the nest of its host and lets the host incubate them. During the course of evolution, the eggs of the parasitic bird have evolved to resemble the host's egg in size and color to reduce the chances of the host. By detecting the foreign eggs and rejecting them from the nest, try to follow the movement of the cuckoo and the crow in your neighborhood. Park it during the breeding season, spring to summer, and watch brood parasitism in action. Commensalism. This is the interaction in which one species benefits and the other is neither harmed or benefited. An orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch and brancicles growing on the back of a whale benefit, while neither a mango tree nor the whale derives any apparent benefit. The cattle, egret, and grazing cattle in a close association, a sight you are most likely to catch if you live in farmed rural areas. It is a classic example of commensalism. The egrets always forage close to where the cattle are grazing because the cattle, as they move, stir up and flush out insect from the vegetation that otherwise might be difficult for the egrets to find and catch. Another example of commensalism is the interaction between sea anemone that has stinging tentacles and the clownfish that lives among them. The fish gets protection from predators which stay away from the stinging tentacles. The anemone does not appear to derive any benefit by hosting the clownfish. Mutualism. This interaction confers benefits on both the interacting species. Lichens present an intimate mutualistic relationship between a fungus and photosynthesizing algae or cyanobacteria. Similarly, the mycorrhiza association between fungi and the roots of higher plants. The fungi helps the plant in the absorption of essential nutrient from the soil, while the plant in turn provides the fungi with energy yielding carbohydrates. The most spec- uh, is- spectacular evolutionary fascinating example of mutualism are found in plant animal relationship. Plant need the help of animal for pollinating their flowers and dispersing their seeds. Animal obviously have to be paid fees for the service that plants expect for them. Plants offer rewards or fees in the form of pollen and nectar for pollinators and juicy and nutritious fruits for seed dispersers. But the mutually beneficial system should not always be safeguarded against against cheaters. For example, animals that try to steal nectar without aiding in pollination. Now you can see why plant animal interaction often involve co-evolution of the mutualists. That is, the evolution of flower and its pollinator species are tightly linked with one another. In many species of fig trees, there is a tight one-to-one relationship with the pollinator species of wasp. It means that a given fig species can be pollinated only by its partner wasp species and no other species. But the female wasp uses the fruit not only as an oviposition egg-laying site but uses the developing seeds within the fruit for nourishing its larva. The wasp pollinate the fig inflorescence while searching While searching.
For suitable egg-laying sites in return for the favor of pollination, the fig offers the vast some of its developing seeds as the food for the developing wasp larva. Orchids show bewildering diversity of floral patterns, many of which have evolved to attract the right pollinator insect, bees and bumblebees, and ensure guaranteed pollination by it. Not all orchids after rewards the Mediterranean orchid offers employ sexual deceit to get pollination done by a species of bee. One petal of its flower bears an uncanny resemblance to a female and bee size, color, and the marking. The female bee is attached to what it perceives as a female. Pseudocopulates with the flower and during that process is dusted with the pollen from the flower. When this same bee pseudocopulates with another flower, it transfers pollen to it and thus pollinates flowers. Here you can see how the co-evolution operates. If the female bee's color patterns change even slightly for a reason during evolution, plant pollination successes will be reduced unless the orchid flower co-evolves to maintain the resemblance of its petal to the female bee. Here is the summary. As a branch of biology, ecology is the study of relationships of living organisms with the abiotic, physicochemical factors and the biotic components other species of the environment. It is a concerned It is a concern with four levels of biological organization, organism, population, communities, and biomes. Evolutionary changes through natural selection takes place at the population level, and hence population technology is an important area of ecology. A population is a group of individuals of a given species sharing or competing for similar resources in a defined geographic area. Populations have attributes that individual organisms do not: birth rates and death rates, sex ratio, and age distribution. The proportion of different ages groups of males and females in a population is often presented graphically as age pyramid. Its shape indicates whether a population is stationary, growing, or declining. Ecology effects of many factors in a population are generally reflected in its size. Population density may be expressed at different ways: numbers, biomass, percent, carbon, etc. Depending on the species. Populations grow through births and immigration and decline through the deaths and immigration. When resources are unlimited, the growth is usually exponential, but when resources become progressively limiting, the growth pattern turns logistic. In either case, growth is ultimately limited by the carrying capacity of environment. The intrinsic rate of natural increase R is measure in the inherent potential of a population to grow. The natural population of different species in a habitat to do not live in isolation but interact in many ways. Depending on the outcome, these interactions between two species are classified as competition, predation and parasitism. One benefits and the benefits. Commensalism, one benefit means other is unaffected. Commensalism, one is harmed, another is unaffected. And mutualism, both species benefit. Predation is a very important process through which tropic energy transfer is facilitated. Some predators help in controlling near prey population. Plants have evolved diverse morphological and chemical defenses against the herbivore. In competition, it is presumed that the superior competitor elements and the inferior one, the competitive exclusion principle. But many closely related species have evolved various mechanisms which facilitate their coexistence. Some of the most fascinating cases of mutualism in nature and seen plant predator interactions. So our chapter is finished. Thanks.